The rain drummed on the roof of the simple house in Oceanside, like the sky was collecting an old debt. Lily Davenport watched the drops trickle down the foggy window, each one carrying away a piece of her childhood that would never return. At 20, she had learned that love was a dangerous word in her mother's mouth, and that beauty could be both blessing and curse. Veronica Davenport had been a model in the 90s, when America still dreamed of international runways and million-dollar contracts, but time is cruel to those who live by appearance alone, and at 45 all that remained of her glory were yellowed photographs and debts that grew like weeds. The house where they lived, a two-bedroom apartment on the top floor of a building without an elevator, was all that remained of an empire built on empty promises and toxic relationships. Lily had grown up watching the men who passed through, her mother's life like tourists in a foreign land. Some stayed weeks, others just one night. All left something behind: money, expensive gifts, or simply the smell of masculine cologne that took days to leave the furniture. But none of them looked at Lily as if she were more than an obstacle to be avoided. That's why she had built walls around her heart, high walls, without gates, without windows. At 16, when the boys at school began to notice her curves and her green eyes that seemed to hold secrets, Lily already knew that her body was her sacred territory. Not out of religious modesty or outdated morality, but from a visceral understanding that giving herself meant losing herself. On that March night, the eve of her 21st birthday, Veronica entered her daughter's room with a tense face and red eyes, not from crying but from exhaustion. An exhaustion that came from far away, laden with wrong choices and burned bridges. "Lily, we need to talk," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed with the delicacy of someone touching something fragile. "If it's about money again, Mom, I already said I can work more hours at the bookstore. Mr. Roberts said that—" "It's not about the bookstore," Veronica interrupted, running her hands through her bleached blonde hair. "It's about an opportunity, a chance to solve everything at once." Lily closed the book she was reading and turned to her mother. She knew that tone of voice. It was the same one Veronica used when she was about to justify something unjustifiable. "What kind of opportunity?" "There's a man, a very powerful businessman. He has an interest in you." "Interest in me?" Lily laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Mom, I've never even left San Diego. What powerful businessman would know me?" Veronica looked away, fixing her gaze on the wall where there was a photo of the two of them taken years ago, when they still pretended to be happy. "He saw your photos on social media." "My photos?" Lily's voice rose an octave. "What photos? I barely post anything." "The ones I posted. You're beautiful, Lily. More beautiful than I ever was, and he noticed that." The truth began to form in Lily's mind like a storm approaching the horizon. Slow, inevitable, devastating. "You sold me," she said. Not as a question, but as a statement. "I didn't sell anyone." Veronica stood up, defensive. "He wants to meet you, give you opportunities, a better life than this." And, in exchange, the silence that followed was more eloquent than any confession. Veronica looked at her own hands, where a cheap ring had left a green mark on her ring finger. "In exchange for what, Mom?" "For paying off our debts, for having a decent life, for you not having to work in a bookstore earning minimum wage for the rest of your life." "You sold me," Lily repeated, this time with her voice breaking, not from sadness but from anger, a cold anger that came from a deep place where all the disappointments accumulated over the years lived. "Lily, you don't understand. We owe money to dangerous people, people who don't negotiate, who don't wait. If we don't pay—" "How much?" $500,000. Lily felt the floor move beneath her feet. $500,000 was more money than she could gather in 10 lifetimes working at the bookstore. "How did you manage to owe so much money?" Veronica didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was a whisper laden with shame. "Cocaine. To keep the weight off. To handle the nights. To not think." The admission hung in the air between them like toxic smoke. Lily had always known her mother used something, but she never imagined the extent of the problem. And now this mysterious man is going to pay your debts in exchange for what? My body? My virginity? My life? It's not that simple. Then, explain to me how it is. Veronica approached the window, watching the rain that continued to fall. His name is Ethan Volkov. He's Franco-Russian, heir to a pharmaceutical empire. He has farms all over. Other country, laboratories, political connections. He's a man who gets what he wants. And he wants me. He wants to meet you, spend time with you, at a ranch in rural Virginia. Isolated place. Safe. Isolated, Lily repeated, tasting the word, as if it were poison. So no one can hear me scream. It's not like that. He's not violent. He's educated, refined. He just has specific needs. What needs? Veronica hesitated. He lost someone, a woman, a few years ago, and you look like her. The revelation fell between them like a bomb. Lily felt her skin crawl, not from cold, but from sudden and terrifying understanding. I'm a substitute, a doll for him to play with and pretend he's with someone else. We don't know if that's it. Maybe he genuinely likes you. Maybe it's the beginning of something real. Something real? Lily laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. Mom, you just told me he wants me because I look like a dead woman. What part of that sounds real to you? Veronica turned, and for the first time in years, Lily saw genuine tears in her mother's eyes, not tears of manipulation or self-pity, but of genuine remorse. Lily, I don't have a choice. If we don't pay, they'll kill us, both of us. Then let them kill us. At least I'll die as myself. Don't say that. Veronica approached, trying to touch her daughter's face, but Lily moved away. When? Tomorrow. He's sending a car to pick you up. On my birthday. I know it's terrible, but get out of my room. Lily, get out of my room. Veronica backed away as if she'd been slapped. For a moment she stood at the door, seeming to want to say something more, but the words didn't come. She left, gently closing the door behind her. Lily was left alone with the rain and the certainty that her life had just taken an irreversible turn. She lay on the bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and closed her eyes, trying to imagine what it would be like to wake up the next day, knowing it would be the last day of her freedom. But sleep didn't come. Instead, a cold, crystalline determination began to grow in her chest. If she was going to be forced into this game, then she would play by her own rules. Ethan Volkov wanted a docile substitute for his dead woman. Then he would meet Lily Davenport and discover that some women refused to be replaced. The next morning, the car arrived promptly at 10 o'clock. It wasn't what Lily expected, neither an extravagant limousine nor an armored military vehicle. It was a discreet black sedan, driven by a middle-aged man who introduced himself simply as Joe. He helped Lily with her small suitcase without asking questions or making comments, treating her with a distant kindness that somehow reassured her. Veronica stayed at the window, watching. She didn't come down to say goodbye, didn't wave, didn't cry. She just watched as if she were attending her own funeral. The journey to Virginia took 6 hours. Joe wasn't talkative, but he wasn't hostile either. He stopped twice so she could use the bathroom and buy water, always remaining respectfully close but not oppressive. Lily took advantage of these stops to try to call some friends, but her cell phone had no signal. When she asked Joe about this, he simply said that the ranch was in an area with limited coverage. As they moved away from the city, the landscape changed. The gray of the asphalt and concrete gave way to the green of the Virginia mountains, dotted with cattle farms, and plantations that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was beautiful, Lily had to admit, but beauty could hide dangers, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being taken to a place from which she might never leave. Pine Grove Ranch appeared late in the afternoon, when the sun was already beginning to set behind the mountains. It wasn't what Lily expected. Instead of an ostentatious property, typical of the nouveau riche, it was an elegant and discreet construction that seemed to have grown from the earth itself. The main house was spacious but not exaggerated, built of stone and wood. with verandas that surrounded the entire structure. There were other buildings scattered throughout the property, stables, a smaller house that probably housed employees, and in the distance what appeared to be a laboratory or office. Joe stopped the car in front of the main entrance and got out to get Lily's suitcase. She remained seated for a moment, observing the house that would be her prison or her home for the next... how long? No one had specified the duration of her stay. "Mom?" Joe opened the passenger door, extending his hand to help her out. Lily took a deep breath and accepted the offered hand. Her feet touched the irregular stone ground of the entrance, and she had the strange sensation of crossing an invisible line. Behind her was the life she knew, however difficult it might have been ahead, the absolute unknown, Imar. Front door opened before they reached it. A woman of about 50, with grey hair tied in an elegant bun, came out to receive them. She wore a simple but well-cut dress in navy blue, and her eyes were gentle but cautious. "You must be Lily," she said with an accent that Lily couldn't identify. "I'm Helen, the housekeeper. Welcome to Pine Grove Ranch." "Thank you," replied Lily, surprised by the genuine courtesy in the woman's tone. "Mr. Volkov will arrive within a few hours. He asked for you to get settled and rest from the trip. Joe, can you take the young lady's luggage to the blue room, please?" The blue room was on the second floor, down a wide corridor with several doors. Helen led her there, making her way with efficient but unhurried movements. "This will be your accommodation," she said, opening a dark wooden door. "I hope it's comfortable." Lily entered and had to admit that it was more than comfortable. It was luxurious. The bed was spacious, covered with cotton sheets that seemed too expensive to exist. There was a reading armchair by the window, an antique but well-preserved desk, a wardrobe that was probably larger than the room she shared with her mother in San Diego. The window offered a stunning view of the mountains, already tinged with gold by the setting sun. "There are clothes in the closet," continued Helen. "Mr. Volkov asked us to choose some pieces that might please you. If you don't like anything, we can provide others." Lily opened the wardrobe and almost choked. There were dresses, blouses, skirts, shoes, all in her exact size, all obviously. Expensive, all in colors that complemented her skin tone and eye color. It was as if someone had carefully studied her preferences and her body. "How did he know my size?" she asked, running her fingers over a green silk dress that would cost a year's salary at the bookstore. Helen hesitated. "Mr. Volkov is meticulous in his preparations." "Meticulous. Is that what you call it?" "Miss Lily," said Helen in a tone that mixed warning and compassion, "may I give you some advice?" "You may. Mr. Volkov is not a bad man, but he is a man who has suffered greatly. Sometimes people who have suffered greatly can hurt others without realizing it, not out of malice but out of pain. And that's supposed to reassure me? It should alert you. Be yourself, but be cautious. And remember, there are always staff nearby. You're not completely alone here." The housekeeper left, gently closing the door. Lily stood in the middle of the room, processing everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, she was a poor girl who sold books in Oceanside. Today she was, what? Prisoner, concubine, substitute. She decided she needed a bath. The bathroom attached to the room was as luxurious as the rest. Marble bathtub, shower with multiple water, outlets, hygiene products that probably cost more than her monthly salary. She filled the tub with hot water and allowed herself to relax for the first time since her mother had made her terrible confession. In the warm water, she finally managed to cry. Not dramatic tears of self-pity, but a quiet and deep crying of mourning. Mourning for the childhood she never had, for the mother who had chosen drugs over her daughter, for the freedom she had just lost. But also, strangely, a strange kind of relief. At least now she knew where she stood. At least now she no longer had to pretend her life made sense. When she got out of the bath, the sun had already completely set. She chose one of the outfits from the wardrobe, dark jeans and a simple white blouse, the most discreet combination she found. She wasn't going to dress like a doll for anyone. She was combing her hair when she heard a car arriving. The sound Of the engine was different from the sedan that had brought her, more powerful, more expensive. She approached the window and saw a black Mercedes stopping in front of the house. A man got out of the driver's seat. Even at a distance and in the dim light, Lily could see that he was tall, with broad shoulders that filled out the dark suit he wore well. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. When he looked up toward the second-floor windows, Lily instinctively moved away, but not before seeing his face for a moment. Ethan Volkov was handsome in a way that frightened. Not handsome like soap opera, heartthrobs, or magazine models. Handsome like a storm is beautiful, with a beauty that promised both pleasure and destruction. He had dark hair pulled back, an angular face with a well-groomed beard, and even from a distance Lily could feel the intensity of his gaze. She heard voices downstairs, Helen receiving him, probably informing him of her arrival. Then footsteps on the stairs, footsteps that stopped in front of her door. 3 soft knocks. "Miss Davenport, I'm Ethan Volkov. May we talk?" The voice was deep, with a slight accent that confirmed his Russian origins. Controlled, educated, but with an underlying authority that didn't admit refusal. Lily looked at herself in the mirror. 20 years old, brown hair still damp from the bath, green eyes that always seemed too big for her face. She looked like a child preparing to face a dragon, but a child she was no longer. Perhaps she never had been. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and opened the door. And there he was. Ethan Volkov was even more imposing up close than Lily had imagined from the window. He was at least 6'3", with shoulders that perfectly filled the navy blue linen suit he wore. But it wasn't just his physical stature that impressed her. It was his presence. He occupied the space as if he had been born to command, as if the air around him bent to his will. His eyes were such an intense blue that they seemed artificial, almost translucent under the soft light of the corridor. Dark hair with silver strands at the temples, which didn't make him look older but more dangerous. There was an almost imperceptible scar cutting his left eyebrow, and Lily wondered what kind of life left marks like that on a man who clearly had enough money to erase any imperfection. "Miss Davenport," he said with an almost formal reverence, "thank you for accepting my invitation." Invitation. The word hung between them like a polite lie that both recognized, but that neither was willing to unmask yet. "I don't remember having a choice," replied Lily, keeping her voice firm despite the heart that beat like an out-of-sync drum. A smile touched his lips, not of humor but of something that could be approval. "Direct, I like that. Can we talk? There are some things I need to explain." "Here is fine. I would prefer a more private environment. My office is downstairs." Lily hesitated. Following an unknown man to an office in an isolated house in rural Virginia didn't seem like the smartest decision she had ever made in her life. But on the other hand, if he wanted to hurt her, he wouldn't need privacy for that. She was on his territory, surrounded by his employees, completely at the mercy of his goodwill. "All right," she finally said, "but I leave the door open." "As you wish." He moved away so she could pass, a gesture of courtesy that strangely contrasted with the circumstances of her presence there. Lily went down the stairs beside him, aware of every movement, every breath. His scent was subtle but striking, something expensive and masculine that made her stomach contract in a way she preferred not to analyze. The office was at the end of a corridor on the ground floor, behind double doors of dark wood. It was an elegant but functional environment, with shelves full of books in various languages, a large mahogany desk, and leather armchairs that seemed to have cost more than a car. The walls were decorated with photographs of rural properties, some clearly American, others that seemed to be from other countries. Ethan gestured for her to sit in one of the armchairs, but Lily preferred to remain standing, close to the open door. He noticed her choice and didn't comment, heading to the bar in the corner of the room. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Juice? Something stronger?" "Water is fine." He served sparkling water in 2 crystal glasses, adding ice and a slice of lemon with precise movements that suggested familiarity with rituals of hospitality. He offered one of the glasses to Lily, who accepted it but didn't drink immediately. Afraid I might have put something in the drink? He asked in a tone that could be curiosity or amusement. Should I be? No. He drank from his own glass, keeping his eyes fixed on her. I'm not the type who needs to drug women to get what I want. The statement should have been reassuring, but there was something in the way he said it that made Lily shiver, as if he had other methods, more subtle and perhaps more effective. So what is it that you want, Mr. Volkov? Ethan, and what I want is too complex to be explained in a single conversation. Try. He approached the window, observing the landscape that stretched beyond the ranch. In the twilight, the mountains seemed cut out against a sky that changed from blue to violet. Do you know why you're here? My mother told me some things, that you have an interest in me, that this resolves her debts, that I look like someone you knew. Your mother was diplomatic in her explanations. Then give me the non-diplomatic version. Ethan turned to face her, and Lily saw something move in the depths of those blue eyes, pain perhaps, or anger, or both. 7 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Isabella Mendez. She was American from a traditional family in New York. We met at a conference in London, and it was instantaneous, at least for me. He paused, taking a sip of water as if he were buying time. Isabella was beautiful, intelligent, strong, had her own opinions, wasn't easily intimidated, seemed too perfect to be real. And what happened to her? She disappeared 3 days before our wedding. The simplicity of the statement didn't diminish its impact. Lily felt something tighten in her stomach. Disappeared how? Left the hotel where she was staying in New York and was never seen again. Didn't take luggage, didn't leave a note, didn't say anything to anyone. Simply vanished. And you never heard from her again? Never again. He went back behind the desk but didn't sit. The police investigated but found nothing. No clues, no witnesses, no evidence of crime. As if she had simply decided she didn't want to get married and had chosen the most dramatic way possible to communicate that. But you don't believe that. No, Isabella wasn't the type to run away. If she had changed her mind about the wedding, she would have told me to my face. She was that direct, like you. The comparison made Lily move uncomfortably. And where do I come into this story? Ethan opened a drawer in the desk and took out a photograph. He handed it to Lily without saying anything. It was an old photo, a bit faded, showing a man and a woman in an elegant restaurant. The man was clearly Ethan, a few years younger, smiling in a way that Lily couldn't imagine seeing him now. The woman beside him was... Lily felt the blood freeze in her veins. The woman in the photo could be her twin sister. Same brown hair, same green, eyes, same face shape. Even the way she smiled was similar. My God, she murmured, almost dropping the photo. Now do you understand why I became interested when I saw your photos? You're looking for a substitute, someone to pretend to be her. At first, maybe. That was it. Ethan went back near the window as if he couldn't bear to be too close to her while speaking. When one of my employees showed me your photo on social media, my first reaction was disturbance. It was like seeing a ghost. Then why did you bring me here? Because ghosts don't exist, but you exist, and I need to know. Know what? If it's a coincidence or not. Lily put the photo on the desk, moving away from it as if it were radioactive. What kind of coincidence do you imagine it could be? Isabella had family scattered across the country, distant cousins she mentioned sometimes, but with whom she didn't maintain close contact. It's possible that we're related, Lily completed the sentence, feeling a shiver run down her spine. It's possible. Your mother never mentioned an Isabella in the family, Lily thought carefully. Veronica had been raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was a teenager. She rarely talked about family, and when she did, it was always in a vague and melancholic way. My mother doesn't talk much about the past, but I remember her mentioning a cousin who went to live abroad. She said she had done well in life. Isabella graduated in business at NYU and worked in London before we met. The puzzle began to form in Lily's mind piece by piece. The physical resemblance wasn't a coincidence. Isabella was really her cousin, distant, but a cousin. So you brought me here because I'm related to her, because you think I might know something about the disappearance. Initially, yes, but now what? Ethan turned to face her again, and this time he didn't look away. Now I realize that you're not just a substitute for Isabella. You're completely different from her. Different how? Isabella was smooth, diplomatic, knew how to navigate difficult situations with charm and intelligence. You're more direct, more combative. And is that good or bad, in your opinion? I'm still deciding. Lily laughed, a sound that had no humor at all. Good to know I'm being evaluated. It's not an evaluation, it's an observation. You're here whether you want to be or not. The question is, what do we do with this situation? What do you suggest? That you stay a few weeks. Get to know the property, get to know the region. Let's talk about Isabella, about your family, about any information that might help clarify what happened to her. And in exchange, your mother's debts are paid off. You receive a generous amount to start a new life. And perhaps in the process, we'll find some answers that we both need. What kind of amount? $200,000 besides the paid debts. Lily felt the floor move again. It was more money than she had dreamed of possessing in her entire life. And if I want to leave before the weeks are over, you can go, but without the money. And if I don't know anything useful about Isabella, then at least we tried. Lily walked to the window, observing the landscape that was darkening. There was something almost unreal about the conversation she had just had. 6 hours ago, she was a poor girl who lived in Oceanside. Now she was on a luxurious ranch in rural Virginia, talking with a Russian magnate about a missing cousin she barely knew existed. Can I ask a question? You may. Do you really believe that Isabella simply disappeared, or do you think something more serious happened to her? Ethan's hesitation was almost imperceptible, but Lily noticed it. I prefer not to speculate without evidence. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give now. Lily turned to face him. There's something you're not telling me, something important. There are many things I'm not telling, some because they're not relevant, others because it's not the right time. And when will be the right time? When I'm sure I can trust you. The brutal honesty of the answer was almost refreshing. At least he wasn't trying to deceive her with false intimacies or empty promises. All right, she finally said. I'll stay for the weeks you mentioned, but with some conditions. What conditions? First, I want total freedom to explore the property. I won't be locked in the room like a prisoner. I agree, with one caveat. There are some areas that are restricted for security reasons. Helen can explain which ones. Second condition, I want access to phone and internet. I won't be completely isolated from the world. I also agree, there's a landline in the office and Wi-Fi in the main house. Third, if I discover anything about Isabella, anything, I want to know the whole truth about what happened to her, not edited versions or half-truths. Ethan was silent for a long moment, as if weighing the risks of the promise she was asking for. I agree, he finally said, but you need to be prepared for the possibility that the truth is more disturbing than you imagine. Why would it be disturbing? Because people don't disappear without reason, Lily, and the reasons that make people disappear are rarely pleasant. The way he said her name, for the first time since they met, made something move in her stomach. It wasn't just the slightly accented pronunciation, but the unexpected intimacy of hearing her name in his voice. So are we agreed? He asked. We are agreed. Ethan approached the desk and extended his hand. Partners, then? Lily looked at the extended hand for a moment before shaking it. His skin was surprisingly warm and the grip firm without being possessive. But when she tried to let go of his hand, he held it for another moment. Lily? Yes. Thank you. For agreeing to stay, for being willing to help. There was something in his voice that she couldn't completely identify. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. Hope, perhaps. Or relief. Don't thank me yet, she said, finally releasing her hand. "You might regret having brought me here." "Why?" "Because when I want to discover something, I don't stop until I succeed. And something tells me that the secrets of this house are deeper than you're admitting." Ethan smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen on his face. It completely transformed his features, making him less intimidating and more human. "I'm counting on that," he said. Lily left the office with more questions than answers, but also with a renewed determination. She had agreed to stay, not just for the money, although $200,000 was certainly motivating, but because something about the whole situation intrigued her deeply. The resemblance to Isabella couldn't be pure coincidence. And if she really was a cousin of the missing woman, perhaps there was information in the history of her own family that could clarify the mystery. But there was something more. Something in the way Ethan talked about Isabella, in the unhealed pain that showed in his eyes when he mentioned the disappearance. He wasn't just looking for answers about what had happened to his fiancée. He was looking for redemption for something he believed he had done wrong. And Lily had the strange feeling that she was about to discover exactly what it was. Back in the room, she found a tray with dinner on the desk, a simple but well-prepared meal, with a note from Helen explaining that formal dinner would be served at 8 o'clock in the dining room, but that she could eat in the room if she preferred privacy on her first night. Lily opted for privacy. She needed time to process everything that had happened, to plan her next steps. She ate slowly, observing through the window the lights that turned on scattered throughout the property. The ranch was larger than she had initially realized. There were buildings she hadn't noticed upon arrival, some quite distant from the main house. After dinner, she decided to take another bath. The marble bathtub was too tempting to resist, and the hot water helped relax muscles she hadn't even realized were tense. It was when she was getting out of the bathtub that she heard it, a low, almost imperceptible sound coming from somewhere in the house. Music, piano specifically. Someone was playing the piano downstairs. She wrapped herself in the robe she found hanging on the bathroom door and approached the window. She couldn't see where the sound was coming from, but it was undeniably beautiful, a melancholy melody that seemed to float through the house like a ghost of musical notes. Lily got dressed quickly and left the room. The corridor was dark, illuminated only by a few wall sconces, but the sound of the piano became clearer as she descended the stairs. It came from a different direction than the office where she had talked with Ethan, probably from a room she didn't know yet. She followed the sound through the corridors of the house, passing by closed doors and old portraits on the walls. The music stopped for a moment, and Lily feared she had lost the trail, but then it started again, a new melody, even sadder than the previous one. She found the source of the sound in a large room at the end of a side corridor. The door was larger, allowing her to partially see the interior. It was an elegant music room, with a black grand piano in the center, and shelves full of sheet music on the walls. And there, sitting at the piano, was Ethan. He had exchanged the suit for more casual clothes, dark jeans and a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it several times. In the soft light of the lamps scattered around the room, he seemed completely different from the controlled and intimidating man she had met a few hours before. He seemed vulnerable. His fingers moved across the keys with a familiarity that spoke of years of practice. He wasn't an amateur musician playing to pass the time. He was someone who found in the piano a way to express things he couldn't say with words. Lily stood at the door, hesitating between entering and returning to the room. The music was too intimate, too personal. She felt like an intruder observing a private moment. But then Ethan raised his eyes and saw her. His hands froze over the keys, abruptly interrupting the melody. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the space that separated them. "Sorry," Lily finally said. "I heard the music and—" "No need to apologize. Come in." She hesitated for another moment before pushing the door and entering the room. It was even more beautiful up close. Wallpaper in golden tones, antique furniture, and framed photographs that seemed to record decades of family history. "You play very well," she said, approaching the piano. "It's a way to process thoughts." And what were you thinking about? Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he began to play again, a different melody, softer, less melancholic. About how strange it is to have someone in this house again, he finally said, without stopping, playing. I've lived alone here for a long time. Not alone, there's Helen, Joe, other employees. Employees aren't company, they're employees. Lily sat in an armchair near the piano, observing his movements. There was an unexpected grace in the way he played, a delicacy that contrasted with his imposing physical presence. Was this the music that Isabella liked? She asked. His hands faltered for a fraction of a second, producing a dissonant note before resuming the rhythm. Isabella didn't like classical music. She preferred samba, bossa nova, Brazilian music. And yet you continue to play classical music. It's what I know how to play. You could learn other things. I could. He stopped playing and turned to face her. But some things are difficult to change when you've lived alone for a long time. How long is a long time? 7 years, since Isabella disappeared. The sea. Confession hung between them like an unexpected revelation. 7 years of solitude, 7 years playing piano in empty rooms, 7 years looking for answers that might never come. It's a long time to be alone, Lily said softly. It's a choice. Or a punishment. Ethan looked at her with renewed intensity. Why would you say that? Because people don't isolate themselves for 7 years without reason, and the reason is usually guilt. And what do you think I feel guilty about? About what happened to Isabella? About not having been able to protect her? About not having prevented her from disappearing? You don't know me well enough to make that kind of analysis. I don't need to know you. I just need to observe. And everything here screams guilt. The solitude, the melancholy music, the house too big for one person, the obsessive search for answers. Ethan closed the piano lid with a smooth but definitive movement. Perhaps you're too perceptive for your own good. Perhaps you need someone who is perceptive. Why? Because guilty people make bad decisions, and I have the impression that you're about to make one. What kind of decision? Lily stood up, moving to the window that looked out to the gardens at the back of the house. I don't know yet, but I'll find out. When she turned, Ethan was standing too, much closer than she expected. Close enough that she could feel the heat emanating from his body, that she could see the small details of his face that she hadn't noticed before. Lily, he said, with the huskiest voice she had heard up to then. Yes? Tomorrow, I want to show you the rest of the property. There are things you need to see if you really want to understand what happened here. What kind of things? The place where Isabella used to stay when she came to visit me. The locations she liked to photograph. Maybe something will spark a memory. Some information that your family might have mentioned. All right. And Lily? Yes? Thank you for not having run away yet. The day's not over yet. He smiled, the second genuine smile of the night. Good night, then. Good night, Ethan. Lily left the music room with her heart beating in a way she couldn't completely explain. There was something happening between them, something that went beyond the commercial transaction that had brought them together, beyond the search for answers about Isabella. It was dangerous. She knew that. Getting emotionally involved with Ethan Volkov would be like playing with fire in a house full of gunpowder. But as she climbed the stairs toward the room, Lily admitted to herself an inconvenient truth. Danger was exactly what attracted her. Lily woke to the sound of horses neighing outside. The Virginia morning sun came through the linen curtains, tinting the room golden, and for the first time since she had arrived at the ranch, she felt genuinely rested. She had slept deeply without nightmares or anxiety, something rare for someone who had spent her entire life in a state of alertness. She dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a white cotton blouse from the carefully prepared wardrobe. The clothes fit her body perfectly, as if they had been made to measure. It was a constant reminder of how meticulous Ethan had been in his preparations for her arrival. She went down for breakfast and found Helen in the kitchen, preparing fresh bread on a solid wooden table that dominated the center of the environment. The kitchen was spacious and cozy, with a wood stove, antique cabinets and windows that gave a view of the gardens at the back. "Good morning, Miss Lily. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected. Thank you." Helen smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her mature face. "Breakfast is ready. Mr. Ethan already had his and went to take care of the horses, but he said he would meet you after breakfast to show you the property." "Does he always wake up early?" "Always, ever since I've known him. He says mornings are when he can think best." Lily served herself coffee, bread with homemade butter and fresh fruit. It was a simple meal, but everything had an intense flavor that spoke of quality ingredients and care in preparation. "Helen, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "How long have you been working here?" 12 years. I came to work for Mr. Ethan when he bought the ranch." "So you knew Isabella." Helen stopped what she was doing, her hands freezing over the dough she was kneading. "Yes, I did." "What was she like?" The housekeeper thought carefully before answering. "She was luminous. That's the best term I can use. When she was here, the whole house seemed more alive. She laughed a lot, sang while cooking, talked to all the employees as if they were old friends. She cooked. She loved it. Mainly American dishes. She said she wanted to teach family recipes to Mr. Ethan." Helen smiled at the memory. "They spent hours here in the kitchen, her teaching, him trying to learn. It was sweet to see." "And after she disappeared?" Helen's face closed. The house fell silent. Mr. Ethan didn't speak to anyone for weeks. He locked himself in the office, in the bedroom, in the music room. When he finally came out, he was different. More closed, more controlled, as if he had built a wall around himself. "Do you have any theory about what happened to her?" Helen dried her hands on her apron and approached the table where Lily was sitting. "May I speak frankly?" "Please." Isabella was happy here. She constantly talked about the wedding, about the plans they had together. She wasn't a woman who would run away on the eve of her own wedding. "So you think something happened to her?" "I think someone didn't want that wedding to happen." The statement made Lily shiver. "Someone like who?" "I don't know, but Isabella had complications in her life, things she didn't like to discuss." "What kind of complications?" Helen hesitated, looking out the window as if expecting to see someone approaching. "Family, money, the kind of problem that rich people always have but prefer to hide." Before Lily could ask more questions, she heard footsteps on the porch. Ethan appeared at the kitchen door, wearing riding boots, jeans, and a blue cotton shirt that enhanced the color of his eyes. "Good morning," he said, addressing mainly Lily. "Ready to see the ranch?" "Ready." "Helen, can you prepare a picnic basket? We're going to spend the day out." "Of course, sir." Lily finished breakfast quickly, eager to begin the exploration. She had spent the night thinking about the conversation they had had, the questions she needed to ask, the mysteries surrounding Isabella. Ethan led her through the gardens behind the main house to the stables. It was a spacious and well-maintained construction, housing at least a dozen horses of different breeds. The smell of hay and leather mixed with the morning aroma of the countryside. "Do you know how to ride?" he asked, caressing the neck of Chestnut Mug, "and I've never tried." "Then we'll go on foot in the morning. In the afternoon, if you want, I can teach you." They began the walk following a trail that snaked through the property. The ranch was even larger than Lily had imagined. Besides the main house and the stables, there were orchards, an extensive vegetable garden, ponds, and smaller buildings scattered across hundreds of acres. "What do you produce here?" she asked, observing the organized plantations that stretched as far as the eye could see. "Mainly coffee and cattle, but we also have smaller crops, vegetables, fruits, medicinal herbs." "Medicinal herbs?" "For the laboratories, one of my companies develops herbal medicines." It was the first time he mentioned his businesses specifically. Lily made a mental note to ask more about this later. As they walked, Ethan pointed out different areas of the property and told stories about how he had developed each section. He spoke with genuine passion about sustainable agriculture, about the importance of preserving the environment, about the social projects he maintained with neighboring communities. "You seem to really like this," observed Lily. "I do. When I bought this land, it was just degraded pasture. It took years to transform it into something productive and sustainable. And did Isabella like it too? Ethan slowed his pace. Isabella saw potential in everything. She was optimistic, by nature. She said she wanted to raise children here, away from the pollution and stress of big cities. Children. We wanted to have a family, at least 3 children, maybe 4. The melancholy in his voice was palpable. Lily felt a pang of something she didn't want to identify as jealousy for a woman who had disappeared 7 years ago. They stopped to rest near a pond where wild ducks swam peacefully. Ethan spread out a blanket he had brought in his backpack, and they sat under the shade of a leafy tree. "May I ask about your work?" said Lily. "You mentioned laboratories, pharmaceutical companies. What exactly do you do?" "I develop medications, mainly in the area of neurology and psychiatry." "And why did you choose that area?" Ethan was silent for a long moment, observing the water in the pond. "My mother had schizophrenia. She spent much of her life in psychiatric hospitals. When I was a child, I visited her and saw the suffering not only of her, but of all the patients. Many didn't have access to adequate treatments, or the available medications caused terrible side effects." "I'm sorry." "She died when I was 15, an overdose of medication. It was never clear if it was accidental or intentional." The revelation explained a lot about Ethan's closed personality, about his need for control, about the way he isolated himself emotionally. "Was that when you decided to dedicate yourself to medicine?" "It was. I studied pharmacology, biotechnology, genetics. I spent years developing less invasive, more effective treatments. Commercial success was a consequence, not an objective." "And did Isabella support your work?" "She supported it completely. She even suggested that we establish a foundation to provide free treatments for people without resources. Did you manage to do that?" "We established the foundation 2 weeks before the wedding. Isabella was supposed to be the president." Lily felt a knot in her stomach. "And what happened to the foundation after she disappeared?" "It continues to function. Helen administers it in her memory." They ate the picnic that Helen had prepared: artisanal cheese sandwiches, fresh fruit, natural passion fruit juice. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on lighter topics: books, movies, places they would like to visit. Lily discovered that Ethan was surprisingly good-humored when he allowed himself to relax. He had a sharp intelligence and a broad culture that went far beyond his scientific knowledge. He spoke 5 languages fluently, had lived in different countries, knew art, literature, music. "How is it possible that someone like that lives alone on a ranch in rural Virginia?" she asked, half joking, half serious. "Sometimes the safest place to hide is in plain sight," he replied. "No one looks for an international magnate on a coffee ranch." "Hide from what?" "From responsibilities I don't want to assume, from people who want things I can't give, from expectations I can't fulfill." "And from feelings you don't want to face?" Ethan looked at her with that intensity she was beginning to recognize. "You're very perceptive, or you're very transparent. No one has ever told me that before. Maybe no one has paid enough attention." After lunch, they continued the exploration. Ethan took her to see the laboratory, a modern and well-equipped construction where a small team of scientists worked on developing new medications. He also showed her an impressive library in one of the annexed buildings, with thousands of books in various languages and an entire section dedicated to medicine and pharmacology. It was when they were returning to the main house, late in the afternoon, that Lily saw the construction that Ethan hadn't mentioned during the tour. It was a smaller house, more secluded, with architecture similar to the main one but in a more intimate style. There were flowers planted around it, and the windows were closed by wooden shutters. "What is that house?" she asked. Ethan stopped walking, following her gaze. It was the house I was preparing for Isabella, for us, after the wedding." "Can I see it?" "I don't know if it's a good idea." "Why?" "Because it's exactly as Isabella left it the last time she was here." The revelation made Lily's heart race. "You haven't touched anything?" "I couldn't." "Ethan, if you really want to understand what happened to her, maybe it's time to face that place." "And you think you can?" I think we need to try. Ethan hesitated for a long moment before taking a bunch of keys from his pocket. All right, but if it's too difficult, we leave immediately. The walk to the smaller house seemed longer than it really was. Lily felt the tension radiating from Ethan's body, saw the way his hands closed into fists, how his breathing became more controlled. The door opened with a soft creak, revealing an interior that seemed suspended in time. It was like entering a time capsule, preserved exactly as it had been left 7 years ago. The main room was cozy and feminine, decorated with soft colors and delicate furniture. There were dried flowers in vases, magazines scattered on the coffee table, a closed laptop on a desk near the window. "My God," murmured Lily, looking around. On the walls were photographs, many photographs. Isabella and Ethan in different moments, places, situations. At what appeared to be a family party, at a beach, at an elegant restaurant, in the gardens of the ranch. In all of them, Isabella radiated genuine happiness. Lily approached the photos, carefully studying the face of the cousin she had never met in person. The resemblance between them was even more impressive when seeing Isabella in motion, smiling, living. It was like looking at an alternative version of herself. "She seemed very happy," Lily said softly. "She was, at least here. And in other places she wasn't. Isabella had family pressures, expectations that suffocated her sometimes." Lily walked around the room, gently touching the objects that Isabella had left behind. There was something deeply melancholic about being in that space, surrounded by the remains of an interrupted life. "Can I see the bedroom?" Ethan hesitated again, but nodded. The bedroom was even more intimate than the living room. The bed was made with light blue silk sheets. There were clothes hanging in the closet, beauty products organized on the dressing table. On the bedside table, a book open to a specific page with a silver bookmark in the shape of a butterfly. Lily approached the book. It was an American novel, The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. The marked page contained an underlined passage. "The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth." "Strange passage to underline on a honeymoon," commented Lily. Isabella liked classic literature. She always underlined passages that impressed her. But this passage is about mourning, about false relationships. Why would that impress her? If she was happy with you? Ethan approached to see the book. "I don't know, I never noticed this passage before." Lily continued flipping through the book. There were other underlined passages, all with similar themes. Betrayal, deception, relationships based on interest. It was as if Isabella was trying to understand something about human nature, something that disturbed her. "Ethan, are you sure? Isabella was happy here, really happy?" "I am. Why do you ask?" "Because these underlined passages suggest someone who was questioning relationships, questioning motivations. They don't seem like reflections of a completely in love and confident woman." Ethan took the book from her hands, closing it with an abrupt movement. Isabella was intellectual. She liked to analyze human behavior. It doesn't mean she was questioning our relationship. Or it means exactly that. "Lily, you said you wanted the truth no matter how disturbing it was. The truth is that your fiancé was reading about betrayal and deception days before the wedding. That's not a coincidence." Ethan moved away from her, walking to the window. "Isabella loved me. I know she loved me. I'm sure she did. But that doesn't mean she trusted you or that she hadn't discovered something that made her question that trust. What kind of thing could she have discovered? That's what I need to find out, and I won't be able to if you're not completely honest with me." Ethan turned to face her, and for the first time since they met, Lily saw real fear in his eyes. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. About your business, about your family, about anything that could have alarmed Isabella, about any secret you kept from her. There are things I can't tell for security reasons." "Security of whom, yours or mine?" "Both." Lily approached him, keeping her voice firm, but not aggressive. "Ethan, you brought me here to help discover what happened to Isabella. But how can I help if you only tell me half the story? Because the complete story could put you in danger." "What kind of danger?" "The kind that makes people disappear." The admission fell between them like a bomb. Ethan had just confirmed that Isabella's disappearance had not been voluntary. It had been something more sinister, more dangerous. So you know what happened to her? I suspect, but I don't have proof. And your suspicions involve your business? They involve associations I'd rather not have made, decisions I made in the past that had unforeseen consequences. What kinds of associations? Ethan went back near the bed, sitting on the edge, as if the weight of the conversation had become physically unbearable. When I started my company, I needed investors. A lot of money, very quickly. I wasn't always discerning about the origin of the resources. Dirty money. Money with questionable origins, yes. And Isabella discovered this. Isabella discovered much more than she should have. She was too intelligent, too curious. She started asking questions about contracts, about partners, about transactions that I preferred to keep private. And you didn't tell her the truth? I told part of the truth. I said I had made mistakes in the past, but that I was trying to disconnect from these partnerships, that it was just a matter of time. But it wasn't that simple. No, some contracts can't be easily broken. Some people don't accept being dismissed. Lily sat beside him on the bed, feeling the weight of the revelation. Do you think these people did something to Isabella to force you to continue the business? I think Isabella became a threat to them. She knew too much, questioned too much, and in the world where these people live, threats are eliminated. Why did you never go to the police? With what evidence? And more importantly, do you think the police would be a match for the kind of organization I'm describing? Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. What kind of organization? The kind that moves billions of dollars in illegal drugs, that has contacts in governments, that makes people disappear without leaving a trace. And are you still involved with them? I've been trying to disconnect for 7 years, but it's complicated. Complicated how? They don't want me to leave. My knowledge, my laboratories, my connections, I'm too useful to be dismissed. Lily stood up abruptly, the reality of the situation finally revealing itself completely. So you brought me here knowing I could run the same risk as Isabella? No, you're here for completely different reasons. No one knows about you, about our connection to Isabella. Not yet. But if I discover something important, if I get too close to the truth, I won't let that happen. How can you be sure? Ethan stood up too, approaching her with an urgency she hadn't seen yet. Because this time I'm prepared. This time I know what the risks are. And this time you will protect me, will fight against an international criminal organization. If necessary, yes. The intensity in his voice made her stop. There was something different in the way he looked at her, something that went beyond guilt or responsibility. Why? She asked softly. Why would you risk so much for someone you barely know? Ethan took another step closer, until he was close enough for her to feel the heat of his breath. Because you're not just someone I barely know. You are... I'm what? You're the first person in 7 years who makes me want to fight for something beyond survival. The confession hung between them, laden with unexpected intimacy. Lily felt her heart accelerate, not from fear this time, but from something much more dangerous. Ethan. I know it's complicated. I know it started as a transaction, as a way to pay off debts and find answers, but it became something more. What exactly? Something I haven't felt since Isabella. Something I thought had died with her. Lily wanted to back away, wanted to maintain the emotional distance she had carefully built over the years. But there was something in his gaze, in the raw vulnerability that showed through, that kept her motionless. This is dangerous, she said. I know. For both of us. I know. And even so I can't stop feeling. They stood there, standing in Isabella's room, surrounded by the remains of a love that had ended tragically, recognizing the beginning of something new and equally dangerous. It was Lily who moved away first, breaking the moment before it became irreversible. We need to get out of here, she said with a slightly husky voice. Yes. And we need to have a serious conversation about what to do next. Yes. Because if we're going to continue looking for the truth about Isabella, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. I'll tell you everything. Tonight. Without omissions. Promise? I promise. They left Isabella's house in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The sun was setting behind the mountains, tinting the sky with shades of orange and pink. They walked back to the main house. Lily felt that she had crossed another invisible line, not just in the investigation about Isabella, but in her own emotional life. She was falling in love with Ethan Volkov, and that wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially fatal.